see this, it's like peeling away the layers of an onion, and the client thinks is not the primary issue.
I'm Heather Grzych, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrzych.com or on Instagram at heathergrzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today, I'm here with Sarah Teeple, who is a women's integrative health practitioner who blends the modern science of functional medicine with the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda. She helps women with hormonal and digestive issues and anxiety live their best lives by uncovering root causes of their health issues. Then she guides them down the path naturally of healing using personalized nutrition, herbs, and lifestyle. And Sarah, and I am so excited to talk with you today, not just because we have like a common language in Ayurveda, but also because I'm less familiar with functional medicine. And I know a lot of people are utilizing it today. So I also want to talk about that. Let's get into it.
Yes, let's.
Cool. First of all, let's just start with a question that we're all wondering. Why do you think so many people have such difficult relationships with food?
That is such a good question and such a multifaceted one. I think there are two really big factors. It's kind of like the overlapping circles of a Venn diagram. And I think the combination of what I call our toxic diet culture, mostly geared and marketed towards women. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and we grew up with all this imagery of, 6 foot tall, stick thin, usually blonde women. This was back then. Now it's a lot more diverse, thank goodness. But we grew up with this imagery of a very unattainable body and all this messaging about our value being related to whether or not we look like that. And because it's unattainable, that gets really deep into our psyche and our heart. And from a very young age, I think we often feel some unworthiness and some shame or just worry around our bodies. So there's that kind of discomfort being in our own body and those worries and anxiety that are kind of planted from a young age. And then the combination, and this really took off in the 80s and 90s, of processed, fake, chemical-laden foods and diet trends. So I guess the two overlapping circles create the toxic diet culture because we're told we're not good enough, and then we're given all these fake solutions that usually have to do with eating fat-free, but make sure you're eating this product or eating this special designer shake that has these macronutrients. And what it does, and as we know in Ayurveda, our connection to ourselves as elemental beings and as natural beings is so important. But the toxic diet culture just takes us away further and further away from that in all the ways. And so it just really sets us up for a very problematic relationship, not only with food, but with our bodies.
Well, you're really making me flash back here because I remember all that fat-free marketing. We're probably around the same age. Oh, I think I might be a little older, but that free thing, I got totally sucked into it.
I did too. I was totally into it. Yeah, Snackwells, fat-free cookies. You're like, I can eat the whole box of these devil's food cookies because they're fat-free. And then now we know your blood sugar spikes. It's just nutritionally void. So you're not getting any nourishment you need, but you're getting the blood sugar spike and crash. So then you're just hungry for more carbs. And you've also just totally messed up your blood sugar and are in the process of dysregulating your hormones.
Right. And so it's like this thing about how food is packaged, produced, marketed, and all of a sudden our brains start to like latch on to a word that we think is beneficial for us, like do this. And then you get the carrot at the end if you do this. I know you've had quite a health journey yourself, and I want to hear your story. Before we get there, though, I need to ask you how people pronounce Ayurveda in Kentucky.
Yes. So they either don't pronounce it, because they're just too intimidated to pronounce it, or I hear a lot of Ayurveda. So they think it's AR. And you know what? I hear that a lot, even amongst some of our peers and Ayurvedic practitioners. And I think some people just like have the eye and the ear for pronunciation in other languages. Not that it can't be learned, but some people like really like other languages, and some people just don't hear it that way.
I hear that all the time, the Ayurveda thing, and even some of the leaders in our field, and I get very confused. So I grew up in Rhode Island. So growing up, my name was Heather
Heather.
because they don't pronounce their R's. So my parents say Ayurveda,
Ayurveda. I love it. Yeah.
Ayurveda. So I
Uh-huh.
was curious, how it happened.
So with a more Kentucky accent, though, it probably would be, and I don't really have a Kentucky accent. I live in a city called Louisville, which is a bigger, like, metropolitan area.
Louisville, yeah, you said it like somebody from there though, because I would say Louisville or
That's right. Louisville or Louisville. Yeah, Louisville. We slur it together. But
okay,
so I guess Kentuckians be like, Ayurveda? Like there'd be like a little draw. Ayurveda?
yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I was curious about that. And that's interesting. I think it's relevant because we're bringing forth some ancient wisdom that comes from a different culture where people one spoke a different language and we studied in, things that were taught to us in other languages and having to translate that oftentimes from our teachers who were Indian, many of them with accents and things like that, and then try to sort of get all this to the American public. It's been quite a trip, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a portal that we go through. Like, all right, this is what we learned. This is how we're going to make it feel approachable. And, this is how we're going to present it,
yeah,
without losing some of the authenticity,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So it sounds like you've been through a bit of a health transformation. I'm hearing that it took you 8 years to go through this health transformation. Can you tell us a little bit about what you went through?
Yes. Yes. I will synopsize 8 years in a much shorter period of time. But yes. So, to just quickly preface, in a nutshell, you and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And, some of my body image issues really started at a really young age. I tried all of the diets starting when I was in probably about fourth grade. So, like Slim Fast shakes. There's one called Richard Simmons Deal a Meal where you get these cards that you parcel out for every meal. Like, this is how many fruits and grains you can have. And so I was really body conscious from a young age. And I grew up just being a little bit chubby, but very aware of that and feeling like I was not acceptable for that reason. And that's why I think I attract a lot of women who have had the same struggles and who have body image issues and have like weight that they just can't seem to shed because of some stress and emotional eating patterns that were rooted in that dieting at a young age. So that's kind of my weight journey. More of my health journey began when I was in my 20s. I was in a rock and roll band. So for a decade with my ex-husband, we had a rock and roll band called the Ladybirds. And we were loud, rowdy, late night punk rockers who drank Kentucky bourbon all night and smoked cigarettes and did all the not holistic Ayurvedic things. But I was always really interested in holistic health and in alignment with nature. I just wasn't living it, but I was always very curious about it. And there came a time in my own life when I was just seeing that my lifestyle was not sustainable. I was still holding on to some excess weight and inflammation. I had a lot of anxiety, probably because of kind of mood swings and blood sugar fluctuations from drinking too much alcohol and sometimes making bad food choices when we were on tour. But I was feeling like my lifestyle was not sustainable. And then I had a chemical exposure in 2008. So I breathed in like a large amount of some pretty toxic chemicals. And right when that happened, I knew something was going on. But then about 3 to 4 hours later, and then continually, it was like a weight was being just dropped on my chest. I had so much lung inflammation. And then that really turned into some systemic inflammation with skin rashes, with lots more anxiety. And I was looking for answers because this was just getting worse and worse. And this is when I was a singer. So a singer with inflamed lungs is bad news, really bad for the band and my singing career. So I was looking for any answers, and the answers I would get at my allopathic doctor were like, take this inhaler, which didn't help because I didn't have asthma. So do this inhaler or take this Xanax for your anxiety, or, put this steroid on your skin, where it's inflamed. And just none of it really worked. And it didn't seem sustainable. And I felt that I wasn't treating the root cause. I was like, the root cause is I had an exposure. It led to some toxicity or inflammation. How do I address inflammation? So back in 2008, functional medicine was kind of just becoming a thing in the United States. And when you would research inflammation and root cause, functional medicine, nutrition would come up. So I knew, okay, I need to cut down on some inflammatory foods, gluten, sugar. I should probably stop smoking cigarettes, which of course I did eventually, probably cut down on the old alcohol. I think I switched from like beer, which had gluten, to vodka at the time. So this, still was quite a while ago. But I did some things. I made some lifestyle changes, and that helped significantly. And that really just fueled my fire about, wow, there is really something here. And functional medicine asserts that any condition, there are one or several root causes that apply to any condition, from lung inflammation to cancer to fertility issues, and I just found that so interesting that if we take care of our body at a foundational level, so many different things, all the branches of the tree, right? All the different symptoms that can crop up, those can all be managed or healed or, at least helped. And how empowering is that? So quit the band. Actually, I've got a divorce from my ex-husband. Went into nutrition. I studied at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and became a health coach, and was more kind of like a functional medicine nutritionist at that point. But I had a lot of my own health issues still. I still had anxiety. I had lost weight, but I was constipated and had not had a period for years. And so I knew there was something else. I was like, I'm doing all these perfect functional medicine things, like I'm paleo. I consume collagen powder and fish oil and have my bulletproof coffee every morning and eat lots of salads and smoothies, all these kind of Western wellness and functional medicine things that do have a lot of science behind them and do have a lot of value. But as you may know, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, they were not right for my dosha at all. So when I went to yoga school in 2016, I found Ayurveda, and immediately it was just like a truth bomb had been dropped on me. And I was like so inspired. It was like revelatory, a revelation, because I realized, okay, I'm not eating for Vata dosha, which was my primary dosha. So made some dietary changes. The constipation, the fertility issues were solved. I now have 2 little kids. And so Ayurveda just really transformed my life. And so now I love to bring it to people, especially like our yogi sisters who are trying too hard and restricting and living off smoothies and salads and trail mix, and they're constipated and their anxiety's going crazy. I love to share with them that it can be so much easier, like it doesn't have to be so deprived, and you don't have to be so orthorexic, a little bit like wellness obsessed. We can open it up and make it so much more sensible and sustainable for you, and you get to love your body in the process. So that's my journey.
Wow. And anybody who has seen you, to picture you, I've been in the same room as you, and you're teeny, right? Well, I think you're taller than me, but you're quite fit.
We're both petite. Yeah, we're both petite girls.
And petite. And so it's very difficult for me to even picture you with some of the ways that you described yourself in the past. But at the same time, understanding like the Vata dosha, right? And the way in which it can go out of balance. And I think a lot of people are struggling because they work so hard to fix things, and they're just kind of not seeing something. And so like, right, a lot of the energy is just not like they're not working hard. They're just not working on the thing that is actually going to make a difference.
Yes, yes, like the primary issue. And sometimes, even in work with clients, I'm sure you see this, it's like peeling away the layers of an onion, and the thing that the client thinks is the issue is not the primary issue. Do we always want to help the client with their symptoms and what they perceive as their issues? Definitely that's a huge priority. But yeah, it's like an example could be that, I thought maybe, okay, constipated, I'm not eating enough fiber. So this salad and this smoothie has a lot of fiber, and, raw food is so good for you. It's so nutrient dense. So I thought I needed more fiber, but in fact, I needed to eat, yes, fiber, but that my digestive system could handle. So I was doing all these things for gut health, but not for my style of gut health. And to me, that's the big shift, or the big kind of aha moment for a lot of people. What is your metabolic style? What's your hormonal style?
Right. Because our human brains want to get stuck on these labels. This is healthy. This is gut healthy. This is probiotic. Oh, that word is equal with healthy. This is equal with healthy. This is equal with healthy, because we hear all of our friends talking about it. And it's like a mental trap, right? That we get caught into. All right. So I love talking to people who've been through the ringer on something. I didn't know you were in a band. That's so super cool.
A lot of fun.
I want to go hear some music now.
Yes, I'll email you some songs.
Okay. And it's like you've been reborn in a way. I guess that's the point of me like trying to picture you. I feel like we need a before and after picture of you. I want to see that, and I want to share
Totally.
one with you too, because I was a person that was a smoker, and, I was a softball player, and I had a very specific lifestyle. I was probably the only person on my team that didn't drink beer every day,
Yeah.
playing softball, but everybody else on my team did. And so when you're also around a lot of people who are not very healthy, it's really hard for you to know what is healthy, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, when substances that kind of separate you from yourself are also present, like alcohol, and I mean, some other things, even like cigarettes can be a habit that sort of take you away from yourself, or like junk food and stress eating. But when we have these habits that take us away from ourselves, it's also like sometimes we don't realize how discontented we are, or we don't realize there are things stirring at a deeper level because we're kind of always pasting over it with this other thing. And so I think that just speaks to, what you just said about it can be really hard because all your peers and friends, or even your family, are doing something and might not feel aligned to you on some level, but you're kind of still participating in it just because you feel like it's just what you do and it's how you connect with them. So it can be challenging for people. Definitely. It was for me.
Yeah. And this idea of getting at the root cause of something, I think a lot of people talk about this. A lot of people want to do it. And what do you think it takes to actually get at the root cause of something?
Yeah. Well, so in a very kind of practical way to answer that, I feel like there are a lot of different ways we could go with that. The way that I do it in my practice is, by observing the client, so there are some things that we can tell just by observing our clients. When I am in person with people, it's easier to take pulse and, do those kinds of diagnostics. But I have a diagnostic tool that I use with all my beautifully balanced clients that's immensely helpful. I call it the root causes questionnaire. So it's just a laundry list of symptoms. Do you experience this? Check the boxes that apply to you. But it's categorized. So there are several root causes where if you experience, 5 or more of them, it's a little different for each category. But then we know your like stress hormone overdrive is an issue for you. If you check these categories, we know stress hormone, or these boxes under this category, enough of them, we know stress hormone exhaustion is an issue for you. If you check these, we know we need to look at your thyroid. These gut imbalances, environmental toxins, nutrient deficiencies, stealth infections. Those are kind of the main root causes in functional medicine. So I use that questionnaire a lot, but it's so interesting that most of the time the results that I get on the questionnaire from the client, it's like Ayurvedically, I've already observed what that questionnaire is just validating for me. So, in Ayurveda, I think, and I'd be so interested in your take on this too, because I'm just sort of saying this off the top of my head, but I think a lot of root causes are nervous system dysregulation or, nervous system like overactivity, inflammation, gut issues, but then we have to decide. And this is why, to me, functional medicine was not enough. Ayurveda really needed to be present. But if there are gut issues, what type of gut issues? Because we know in Ayurveda, we're going to treat someone totally differently if they have heaviness in their digestion, slow, mucousy stools. We're going to treat them way differently, their gut issue differently than the other person's gut issue who might have heartburn, burning in their stomach, those kinds of things. So we have to kind of look at the nuances of the root causes.
Yeah. And something you said earlier, I thought was really a beautiful way to say it. You said, what takes us away from ourselves? And I think this is why I do a lot of reflection on why is Ayurveda so helpful? Why does it work? And why does it work in a way that's hard to study? Because those of us who've utilized it and do it with people, we know it works. We might have a difficult time explaining why, even when we learn the technical, because it requires us to speak in another language to explain it and stuff. But it's like this idea of you having a mind, a body, and a spirit, and how that's all connected. And a lot of what you're saying and how we heal, in the way you worded it, you said, what takes us away from ourselves? To me, that's incredibly spiritual, because if you look at, depending on how you see yourself, right? So if you see yourself as like, oh, I'm my left butt cheek, or we're complex and we have multiple parts, but it's almost like there's more of us than we realize, and there's more experience than we realize. And we don't pay attention to certain things because we lock in on things that are distracting.
Yeah. So that's such a good observation. And I feel like that is really like the essence of it. We can be so distracted by, whether it's our bad habits or a relationship that's not serving us, or, the latest, greatest Instagram wellness trick, or, even when it's things that are seemingly healthy and that we're trying to pursue for the greater good of ourselves. But yeah, sometimes we're just so distracted by those things, or like you said earlier, kind of locked in on the wrong thing for us. So like we don't see the forest for the trees, or whatever. There are many different expressions regarding that.
Yeah. And I hear, because we work in the complementary space and we're considered an alternative, quote unquote, from the mainstream medical system, I hear a lot of people say something like, oh, that doctor's not going to help me get at the root cause, or my doctor didn't help me get at the root cause. And in some ways, I'm like, well, duh, because it takes time, and it also takes like this insane discovery that happens like
Yes.
on your
Yes.
end.
Exactly. That's such a good point. I think, like you're saying, there is more of a movement towards, yeah, let's get to the root cause. Let's get to the root cause. And it's almost kind of like a buzzword or term now. And yeah, so people thinking like, this doctor didn't help me get to the root cause. And it's like, that's a big process. And yeah, one of such self discovery, and one of like the tectonic plates almost of your being shifting. Some of it, like your biochemistry, which can be done, with herbs, supplements, nutrition. Some of it, your mindset and your behaviors, and, things that are like 100% within your control, although not minimizing the challenge in making some of those changes. Some of those behaviors are very deeply ingrained. But yeah, even the getting to the root cause, it's not a quick fix. It's not another like allopathic pharmaceutical Band-Aid. And, some pharmaceuticals are very helpful for people. So, we're not totally eschewing them, but it is a more gradual shift. And I think that's why, even though, in some of my marketing, I almost jokingly say, my transition took me 8 years, let me help you do it in 3 months. The truth is, we're not going to solve all health issues in 3 months. but you can be on a totally different path and a totally different trajectory. And you're always going to have a human body. You're always going to have some symptoms here or there, or you balance your dosha and then some little things will go out of balance again. The pendulum swings a little bit. But by understanding your Ayurvedic dosha, understanding your biochemistry, you'll know how to address those things when they start to go out of balance, like teeter out of balance just a little bit. They don't have to become full-blown chronic conditions or just life-shattering issues. You know what to do. I know what to do when I'm getting a little constipated again. I'm like, okay, back to the soups and stews and warm cooked foods, or, maybe I didn't have a big enough lunch yesterday. It's like, your body, you get to know what makes you tick and what's going to make you move towards better health as well.
Yeah, I feel like this biohacker movement, and just people interested in having more information about how they work, what's going in their body, what's coming out of their body. And it seems, I don't know a lot about functional medicine. We had an intro to it when I was doing my master's at Mount Madonna. My understanding is that there's a fair amount more of testing that is done than conventional medicine. And conventional medicine is the way it is because they don't have time to go discover things with you. They're like waiting for your foot to fall off or something. But, it's
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah, yeah.
people that you're getting smacked in the face with something, there's nothing to do for them. That their model is not coaching, their model is not guiding, their model is not deep discovery. And so all these other, including functional medicine, complementary providers, I think fill a gap to help people do that for themselves. And so with these tests that, like, especially these functional medicine tests that you've been doing, what are some of the things that people have learned about themselves through the test results?
Yes, such a great question. So I usually run one or two tests on each of my one-on-one clients. So my beautifully balanced clients will do a hair tissue mineral analysis, HTMA test, or we'll do a dried urine hormone test. Sometimes that's referred to as the Dutch, if you've ever heard that. Stands for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. And sometimes we'll do a stool microbiome test. Unlike functional medicine doctors and some functional medicine practitioners, I don't run a full, huge battery of tests. Sometimes you'll go see a functional medicine doctor as a patient and they'll, run $5,000 worth of tests on you, really getting this full picture of everything that's going on with your biochemistry. I don't personally like that approach because, one, I think it can really overwhelm people. We are complex human beings, and knowing about every single aspect of our biochemistry, sometimes it's just not helpful. And sometimes the reference ranges, we can get kind of obsessed again with this like optimization and being in the perfect range. And also, it's very usual for functional medicine doctors and practitioners to give people like 10 or 15 supplements. And in Ayurveda, we know that our Agni, our digestive fire, our just like the way our bodies process things, usually we're really not going to be able to absorb and assimilate all of those supplements and herbs. And sometimes that'll just cause further metabolic issues and digestive issues.
And like waste resources in the process too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And people just get so overwhelmed. And I'm not trying to disparage functional medicine in any way, but often practitioners and doctors in FM don't really tell people when to take what. And in Ayurveda, we know that timing of dosing is really important. Certain things really will only have the intended action if they're taken with food or away from food or in the morning or right before a meal, so that can be really important, that personalization of when you're taking what. But so, hence my approach where I really like to just choose one or two tests to run. And, with the HTMA test, the hair tissue mineral analysis, just a little hair snip, we send it in. And some of the cool things, our cool takeaways from that are that we can find out what type of oxidizer or metabolizer you are. So there are 8 types of metabolizers: slow type 1 through 4 and fast type 1 through 4. And this has more to do with how your body processes environmental toxins, medications and drugs, supplements, more kind of how your body processes things and less about your like digestive metabolism, although, there's an overlap there. We can also find out about toxic minerals. So, I had one client who we found out she just had toxic levels of mercury, and her body was actually producing these cysts. They weren't cancerous, but, she would have cysts on her ovaries, cysts on her uterus, cysts on her liver, and kept having to get these like little polyps and benign cysts removed. And, doctors were perplexed by it for decades. We did an HTMA test and found out that she was very, very high in mercury. Now, do we know beyond the shadow of a doubt that that was causing the cyst? No, we don't. But we do know in Ayurveda that often when your body is overgrowing tissue, it's kind of trying to reject something. It's kind of like trying to send something out of the vital organs. We can also see what's going on with your thyroid, your adrenals, your blood sugar with the mineral ratios. It's really interesting. So like for myself, I found out I had a very low vitality ratio. This was when I was kind of in adrenal burnout. And that means my sodium to potassium level was very low. I needed more sodium. But in Western medicine, we're told, don't eat salt, don't salt your food at all, low on the sodium. I needed more. So, you just discover things that you would never even think about. And especially if you're going kind of by a standard Western wellness model. So that's HTMA. With the Dutch test, it's really interesting. Obviously hormones, we can find out about estrogen and progesterone, but also your estrogen detox pathways, which can give us a glimpse into cancer risk, like potential cancer risk, especially for estrogen dependent cancers. There's not a one-to-one correlation. So if a detox pathway is high, it doesn't mean you are going to get cancer. But it's really neat to just get this full picture. And then we know, okay, if this detox pathway is high, we really need to support some simple estrogen detoxification. Maybe you shouldn't be doing a lot of soy or a lot of lavender oil or a lot of hops, like a lot of even naturally estrogenic things. Or we know that there are too many plastics in your home and your environment, and those xenoestrogens are kind of clogging up those detox pathways. Your glucocorticoids, those are stress hormones. We can see your 4-point cortisol chart, which tells us where your stress hormones are throughout the day. And cortisol also is your energy hormone. So we don't vilify cortisol. We don't want to have like low cortisol all the time. That would mean
then you'd be sleeping.
Exactly. You're just sleeping, you're fatigued, you're zapped. I do have one client, we just processed her Dutch results, and she has very, very low, like bottomed out cortisol. So we know, okay, let's look at your thyroid medication that you're on. I do work with clients who are on, meds, but let's look at that and see if that's at a good level for you. Let's also support your adrenals, with some wonderful minerals, some lifestyle, some herbs. And then with the gut microbiome, we see a lot of what's going on as far as any gut dysbiosis. So good to bad bacteria ratio. And we can see what pathogens or bad bacteria might be overgrowing. And it's so interesting. I mean, there are gut microbes that have, to do with our sleep, our mood, our histamine creation, so we can find out so much. But I always think it's really important to take those results as a piece of the puzzle and just still look at the really big picture of the person and their life, their mind, their body, and their spirit. Because we can almost get too data hungry. And then we just drive ourselves crazy in the hamster wheel of optimization when, you're a human being. But this data can really help us. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I love it. And I see what you mean. I think if you're a person who can start over obsessing over something, it could get really, really tricky. And so in some ways, what I'm hearing you say is that there's an infinite number of information out there. There's tons of tests, there's so many things that could be looked at, but take it in bites, take it in pieces. Don't like try to do everything at once. And frankly, you can't fix everything at once anyway, right? So
Exactly.
it's a lot to do and you don't want to drive yourself crazy with it. So it's really sweet the way that you can focus people.
Yes. Yeah. Focus people towards their own balance and have that balance of Eastern and Western, some data and maybe some quick wins and some slow, gradual transitions. So because I'm not a functional medicine doctor, I do supervision with one, and she is wonderful. And she's very FM, functional medicine. When I have clients that we're still kind of wondering certain things, she's like, okay, run this test and this test. And that, she's got like the 5 other tests that we want to run. And, again, I really feel like that's where the Ayurveda and the balance piece really comes into play. But it just is so cool to be able to marry these two modalities. But I really feel like my true love and where I see the really deep healing and shifts happen are really with Ayurveda.
Mm. Well, I mean, obviously I'm sold on.
Yeah.
I do run blood work for my clients, and
Oh,
when I
cool.
see them online, especially if a lot of them come to me because they've already had blood work run, and I just review that. But I loved what you said about the 15 supplements that people are getting, and it seems as if every medical field has its thing that it does, so it's like
Yes.
if you go to a naturopath, you're going to have a candida issue, and they're going to treat candida. And if you go to a functional medicine person, they're going to put you on like 8 million supplements. And
Definitely fish oil is going to be in there. Definitely vitamin D. You're definitely going to
Ayurveda
be on a.
people, everybody's going to give you trifala and tell you that there's an issue with your Agni and your doshas. And,
Yes.
although, yeah, so it's tricky also when people are on a lot of supplements. I'm glad that you brought that up, because kind of going with this, I want to fix everything disposition, I will say, that we have often mentally in our culture, and especially for people. I have a lot of really smart clients, that I have a lot of like medical doctor clients themselves, and, people that want to experiment with different things, which is cool. And they'll read all the studies on PubMed, and that's cool. And at the same time, it's just a little bit too much that it's not being efficient and targeted.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel like the best thing for some people is to just, can you get off of all of them for a minute? I'm not going to take somebody off their medication, but like if you're taking a million herbs, I can't take someone. Let's all be clear. Neither Sarah nor I are ever going to tell somebody that they shouldn't take a medication that a doctor has given them. Let's just be clear on that. And some people want to ask you that. We're not going to do that. But when it comes to herbs and supplements and things like that, especially herbs, sometimes you do have to let your body rest from
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. To see what your body's going to do, and just kind of to give your body a chance to be what it needs to be and do what it needs to do. I know even for myself, I love to take time off of anything and everything. I do have some things that I know really work well for me, maybe 1 herb and 2 supplements. That would be like my usual, number of things that I do in my own body. But sometimes I like to just take an expansive time, 3 months off of all of that. And so, of course, like you're saying, it really depends on the individual. But, with a lot of clients, if they come to me with 10 supplements, one of our first tasks at hand is to say, all right, what are the 3 in here that you just really feel like they do a good job for you on an intuitive level? You feel very pleased with this herb or supplement, or even like on a physical level, like I really notice this does well for me. We're just going to essentialize and get things a little more streamlined and succinct. And we'll just wean down to 3 for quite a while, or at least for a month. There's such wisdom in that.
Yeah. And actually, our bodies develop a tolerance to things. So after a while, you're not even getting what you could from it if you took a break from it and then came back to it later, and it could have a stronger effect on you. Yeah, I was curious how much you utilize supplements and things like that in your own life. And I use a lot of herbs, not a lot. I always have like maybe 2 or 3 that I'm playing with in different ways. And I think I do encourage people to try herbs. I think it's great to experiment with them. They're available. You don't need a prescription to go and get them. But at the same time, it is helpful to be guided, especially if you're using some of the heavy hitters that are more medicinal in nature.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes even, in the form of teas, like, I love just dandelion root tea for liver support, or milk thistle tea for liver support, or just plain old wonderful ginger tea or fennel tea for digestion. There's so much wonderful power that even these single herbs in the form of a tea can do for us.
Yeah. And it's definitely better to have a tea than a big old beer. No.
That's right. Or the shot of bourbon, you know. You have a little tincture instead of the shot of bourbon.
I really relate to you because I used to smoke and, a lot in my early 20s and stuff like that. So I feel you in a lot of ways. And these things that we do to ourselves when we're younger, if you stop doing them, they clean up for sure. Sometimes there's some residual things that need a little help out at the
Mhm.
same time. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
but I want to see this before and after picture of you because
I wrote it down, yes.
you're absolutely gorgeous. And I have a feeling that we're going to see a pretty big visual transformation if we see the picture. Okay, final question. What does the wisdom of the body mean to you?
Love this question, and I love the name of your podcast. The wisdom of the body to me means slowing down and listening. So that may be more of an answer of like, how do we access the wisdom of the body? But I think that's really important. I think you can't get to the wisdom of the body when, again, we're so disconnected with ourselves that we can't access it. So for everyone listening, and remind myself too, slow down, take a breath, look inside, and just be still with what you see. You don't always need to act on it right away, right? Fix ourselves, just be.
I really like that response. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's been really great hearing from you today and hearing your story and your wisdom that you've gained through all your experience. Thank you so much for sharing and being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Heather. It was wonderful.
Awesome. Oh, please tell everybody how to get in touch with you as well.
Yes, please get in touch with me at sarahteeple.com. So SARAHTEEPLE.com. And I also have a podcast called Beautifully Balanced that you can listen to. I like to do short, digestible, little 20-25-minute episodes and really weave the functional medicine and the Ayurvedic pieces together.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thanks, Heather. I'll see you soon.
If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. You want a full human experience when you seek a healthcare provider, and you don't want 15 minutes with someone who can't even try to find out the root cause of things because they're so overwhelmed themselves. You have a body, a mind, a heart, and dare I say it, even emotions. You're not crazy. Everything does affect you, and it's possible to feel better if you have the support you need. Set up an appointment with me to heal naturally. Go to heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.